Hello and welcome to this episode of Standard Deviation, my column and video series. I'm TCA Sharad Raghavan, Deputy Editor at ThePrint, and today I'm going to be talking about how there are cracks developing in the friendship between the Modi government and corporate India. In particular, that segment of corporate India that is not at the very top. Last week, Chief Economic Advisor V. Anantha Nageswaran made a statement where he basically said that all of the burden of social and economic problems can't be laid on the government's shoulders and that the private sector must also step up. This was unfortunately politicized, with the Congress leaders saying the government was absolving itself of all responsibility. This, of course, was not the case. But I say it is unfortunate that it was politicized because it meant that the core issue at hand was completely missed. The core issue was that this was yet another sign that cracks are developing between the government and the private sector. A few big corporates are happy, sure, but most of the private sector doesn't seem to be. The fault for this lies on both sides, on the government for several of its stated and unstated policies, and on our corporate leadership, which is too content staying quiet about their concerns. On the government side, and in its defense, there are a number of significant steps it has taken to encourage the private sector to ramp up its investments. The most notable is the 2019 cut in corporate tax rates to levels comparable around the world. Rates were further reduced for new manufacturing investments. This was naturally widely hailed by corporate leaders and industry bodies across the board. Why wouldn't it be? It directly increased the profits of corporate India. However, the flip side of this unsaid agreement was that the companies would then use these profits to invest in the country. This is where the agreement breaks down. Sure, the pandemic happened right after the tax cuts, but the companies used this time and the benefit of the lower rates to downsize, increase profits, and clear their debt. This also cannot completely be grudged. They would obviously look after themselves before looking outwards, especially in times of trouble. These are for-profit enterprises after all. The problem is that nothing much has happened on the investment front since then, even though the economy is back to robust growth. Finance Minister Nirmala Sitaraman has since then called on the private sector to increase investments several times in interviews and speeches. She couched it as asking them to invest in particular areas like urban infrastructure and to support India's sustainable development goals. But the overall unsaid appeal was that the private sector needs to increase investments overall. In late 2020, the FM seemed to lose patience and bluntly asked industry leaders why they were not investing, despite corporate tax rates being cut, production-linked incentives being brought in, and the government defending the private sector at every turn. Here's what she said, and I quote, "I want to hear from India Inc. What's stopping you when countries and industries abroad think this is the place to be now?" I close quotes. Now, you can't get more direct than that. But the leaders of Indian industry neither provided answers nor investments, not anywhere near the levels that India needs at least. The CEA statement should be seen in this light. It was yet another appeal to the private sector to ramp up their investments. The thing is, the FM was wrong about one thing. Companies abroad too aren't as enthused by the India story as they once were. Not only is FDI into India falling, something even the Ministry of Finance has noted in its latest monthly economic review, India's share in global FDI is also falling, which is something the government conveniently left out. The answer to why private investments and FDI are falling isn't easily arrived at. It requires a process of elimination. An April 2023 report by ThePrint found that private investment in India is not correlated to conventional factors such as consumer demand and availability of bank credit. Even capacity utilization has a somewhat weak link. The inescapable conclusion at the time was that the main reason was a lack of confidence amongst Indian businesses. While that report was based on now old data, the conclusion seems to still hold true. Bank credit is still available, and consumer demand is picking up in urban India and is really gathering pace among the upper income segments. RBI data shows that capacity utilization is at the 75% mark, which is typically when companies look to increase their capacity. The answer has to lie elsewhere. In an interview with ThePrint, former Chief Economic Advisor Arvind Subramanian pointed out that many investors in India and from abroad are wary of the government's arbitrary actions. He added that regulatory favors to a few corporate houses have created the impression that the playing field is not quite level. Smaller investors don't want to enter sectors where India's big corporate players are dominant, not for fear of market forces, but for fear of non-market ones. That is, for fear of government action in favor of the dominant big corporate houses. Perhaps another reason for India Inc.'s wariness about entering new sectors is the fact that exiting them when things go bad still takes a terribly long time. A report by ThePrint shows that the time taken to come up with a resolution plan under the Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code is now a whopping 2.5 times longer than the maximum 270 days it should be under the rules. Basically, companies that are forced to exit a business are stuck in this limbo for years. The discontent of smaller corporate India with the BJP government can be seen from the Electoral Bonds data as well. Yes, the BJP received the largest donations, but if you look closely, you'll see that only 490 entities donated to the BJP, and 92 of these were individuals. About 42% of the BJP's donations came from just 10 companies. Remember, until recently, the electoral bonds were considered totally anonymous, and if anybody knew who donated what, it was the government itself through the State Bank of India. If corporate India is happy with the BJP and presumably thus wants it back in power at the center, why didn't we see them come out in much larger numbers to donate? The bonds could be sold in denominations of just rupees 1000, so it's not as if only businesses with crores of profits could donate. Corporate India, especially the large majority not at the very top, has a message to send the Modi government. So far, it has been communicating silently by either not donating to the BJP or by refraining from investing in the country. This silence, which is likely due to fear of government retaliation, not only hurts these companies by keeping them below potential, but also effectively renders a vital engine of India's growth severely underpowered. On that note, that's all from me. Thank you so much for watching.